Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel. It's been a beautiful last couple days here in Madeira Beach, Florida. It's getting warmer and warmer by the day. I'm getting out to throw my discs. I play disc golf. Been getting back into that again. Have a tournament coming up second weekend in July in Daytona Beach. That'll be the first tournament I will have played in since the beginning of January. Looking forward to it. And as you know, if you've learned anything about me, is I only play to win. I do not play to just hang out, to kibitz, to hang out with the dudes and the guys. That's not what I do. It's not what I do with my trivia team. It's not what I do with anything else. I want to win, so the only way I can show up is if I'm in condition to win. So I got to start practice. And it's going to be a little bit of work, especially combining it with the weightlifting I'm doing now. And my 45-year-old body is looking at my brain and saying, what are you doing to us? This wasn't in the contract negotiations we had when we all got together 45 plus years ago, when the body met the mind, and we decided what we were going to do for this lifespan, lifting weights and throwing discs for disc golf at 45 years old, almost 46 years old. This wasn't in the plan. Well, I guess the contract has been renegotiated, at least for the time being. But it's been good to get back out and do that. Hopefully I'll play well, and I'll let you know how I play, even if I stink. So let's get right to the show. Brad Thor's name came up in my research for this show again. I mentioned him a few weeks ago. I mentioned him and Andrew Klavan, both fiction writers, both conservatives, both part of the Never Trump camp, singular. And I guess I am a lesser version of both of those guys. I am a fiction writer, but not as popular as those guys. I am also a Never Trump person, but not as well known as those guys, and I can live with that for now. But it's interesting to me, and I told you at the time, that there's something there. I don't think that's a coincidence that there are three conservative fiction writers that I know, and all of them, including myself, and they're all Never Trump people. Well, he has again popped up. He did an interview with Glenn Beck. And he has gone to the extent of saying that Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are extinction-level events in American politics. Now, if you don't know what an extinction-level event is, that was one of the main words, was called ELE, E-L-E, in the asteroid movie, disaster movie, Deep Impact, the lesser known of the two well-known asteroid-destroying Earth movies that came out in the late 90s. Of course, the other one was Armageddon with Bruce Willis. This one was with Tia Leone, and Robert Duvall, and a couple other actors and actresses whom you might know. Unfortunately, and Morgan Freeman was in that movie too, as a matter of fact. He played the president, but it was kind of the lesser-known version. It was also almost like the made-for-TV version, but it ended up being in the theaters, whereas Armageddon seemed to have a bigger scope to it, just felt bigger. And it probably cost more to make as well. But ELE was a word, extinction-level event was a word that was used in the movie Deep Impact. Tia Leone is a reporter. She hears this word, and she starts wondering what it is, and she finds out that it means this asteroid is headed toward the Earth. Well, Brad Thor used that term in explaining Donald Trump to Glenn Beck. And I'm going to go through this again for any of you who might have missed that. The reason I think that the three of us, me, Andrew, and Brad Thor, think this way, and it was, of course, Brad Thor that came up with Extinction Level Event, which is pretty cool. It would take a fiction writer to come up with something like that. Is that when we start thinking about books, and I haven't been talking much about my fiction writing lately. I wouldn't say it's been on the back burner, but I've been doing more preparation than anything else. I've been sending work out to agents, things like that. But part of the process, because most people will not write a book in their lives, and that's unfortunate because I do believe that every person has a good book in them. That's unfortunate. But I do believe everybody has the capability. I don't believe that me writing books is that special. It's not. It's just something I do. But when you sit down and you start thinking about characters or a plot and the time frame you're going to put it in, whether it's the future or the present or the past, you eventually have to start thinking about what kind of clashes are you going to have? Where is going to be the conflict in that story? Is it between rivals? Is it between a man and a woman in their relationship? Is it a poor person working against a rich person? Or is it a bunch of business people who are trying to fight off the federal government, like in Atlas Shrugged? You can come up with all sorts of ideas all over the political spectrum, anything that you might run into in your daily life or something you just cook up in your own mind. Because you got to have conflict in books. That's where drama comes from. People opposing each other. If everybody is just hunky-dory, then there is no story. How you like that? I'm a poet and I know it. The problem we have as writers, I think, when we start thinking about this is you put either Hillary Clinton, if you get out our template for what a bad guy is or a bad woman is, the truth is that Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton would fit those molds perfectly. You would never write a book where you're having a hero, a good guy, who is like Donald Trump. You just wouldn't do it. You know why? Because people wouldn't believe it. They just wouldn't believe. They would not accept that a guy who talks like that, acts like that, is screwed over people like that, is willing to be rooted for. That you're going to actually cheer him on from page to page as he accomplishes something. You're not going to do that. Readers would not put up with that. And which makes it equally disgusting that they won't put up with it in a fiction book or in a movie or in a play, whatever, or screenplay, whatever you want, any sort of fiction story. But they'll put up with it in real life in voting for a guy who's supposed to be the savior of the United States. That's what makes this all so bothersome. And Brad Thor sees it. Obviously, Andrew Klavan sees it. And I see it. Because when we see Donald Trump, we see a mastermind of evil. He would be the guy who is opposing James Bond. He wouldn't be on James Bond's side. He would be the guy in Die Hard. He would be the Hans Gruber in Die Hard. He would be Darth Vader. Or the Emperor. Let's forget Darth Vader. He would be the Emperor. That's the way we fiction people see Donald Trump. Would never take all his qualities and try to put them into a good guy. And likewise, when you switch that around, and if you want to have a female hero, a heroine, not a heroine, not like the drug, but a heroine is in a female hero, Heroine, Hillary Clinton would be the bad person. She wouldn't be the savior. She'd be the bad person. She'd be the villain. If you had a good woman who's trying to accomplish something, it would be Hillary Clinton. If it is female versus female, Hillary Clinton would be the bad woman, not the good one. And I think that is what Brad Thor, although he hasn't said it in so many words, he probably hasn't quite put it all together, maybe like I have. But that would be something, if I were to be interviewed by Glenn Beck or somebody really, really popular, much more popular than I am, and that's how I would explain it. Now, Brad Thor, he's a well-known author. I'm not. That sucks. I have to live with it. But I think I know what's going through Brad Thor's head. And it's that. You could never get away with being a fiction writer and making Donald Trump your good guy. He would be your bad guy. And that's why I oppose him. And I see that. When I start thinking about the books that I want to write, and I have a list of them, I have a list of stories, Donald Trump could not be the hero in any of them because he doesn't fit. His morality, his ego, his personality, the way he looks at the world just doesn't fit. So I wanted to get that out of the way first, this show. And I think, see, it's one of those things where you know that I'm right. You people who are going to vote for him, you know I'm right. You know that if some author who you love, whether it's James Patterson or who else could it be? The guy that does the Jack Reacher books, and of course the movie that came out with Tom Cruise a few years ago. Those guys, if any of your favorite authors would make a person like Donald Trump the hero, you wouldn't read it. Change the name. Change from Donald Trump to John Smith. You wouldn't read it. Whereas when we get into men who are rich in books and movies, comic books, and they're on the good side, they're like Tony Stark. Howard Stark and Tony Stark's son. Tony Stark, not a perfect person, but at his core, he is a good guy. He is giving of himself to protect the world. No, once again, not a perfect guy, but at his core, good. Same way with Batman, Bruce Wayne. Not a perfect guy, a little mysterious. But Donald Trump is like none of those guys. The fact is, if Donald Trump was Bruce Wayne, he'd want everybody to know that he was Batman. So he could be applauded. He wouldn't care about the danger that it might put his family in or his friends. He'd want everybody to know. Because his ego would take over anything, everything. But Bruce Wayne, he was never about that. He didn't want people to know that he was doing this. He was willing to sit on the sidelines and let everybody think somebody else was the Batman. That is not Donald Trump. And neither is it if she were Wonder Woman. Diana Prince for Wonder Woman. Hillary Clinton being Wonder Woman. You think she want to do that? Huh? She doesn't have the moral fiber to be Wonder Woman or Black Widow, any of these, Scarlet Witch. She could never be them because it's not in her personality. It's not in her moral fabric. It's not in her character to do that. But dang it, one of these people is going to be President of the United States. Good luck with that. One more reason. We as Never Trump people, we don't want to have anything to do with any of it. In fact, I got a message. I think that it was, in so many words, supposed to be a put down, but it isn't. You have to understand something about me, is that nobody makes fun of Ed Dentzel more than Ed Dentzel. Everybody who knows that about me, knows me personally, knows that. Whether it's out on the disc golf course, or at trivia, or on my trivia team, or anything else. When I make a mistake or something, nobody is harder on me than me. And nobody can joke about the mistakes that I make more than me. And being that I make so many mistakes, I tend to joke about myself quite a bit. So when somebody tries to come in and criticize me and try to put me down, I was like, I've already been there, man. I was there like 10 years ago regarding my personality. But somebody sent me something and in so many words saying how I'm going to have no influence on this election. And I just wrote back to the person, I'm perfectly fine not having. I also am happy that I'm not going to have any influence in the election. I'm perfectly happy that I'm not voting for neither one. I am absolutely happy. I have nothing to do with it. So, that was funny. Let's move on to something else. Speaking of which, I guess we might as well get this out of the way right now. Today, Donald Trump passed over at least what can be understood as being that limit, that 1,237 delegate number. The number that Ted Cruz and John Kasich were trying to keep him from getting to, but they dropped out, and so it was inevitable that that was going to happen. And so theoretically, he now has enough delegates to get the nomination when the convention gets here in a few months. 2 months? 3 months? 2 months? Over 2 months? So, is it brighter day for you, all you Trump people? Are you now happy that it's 99.9% certain that he's going to be the nominee? Are you feeling good about that? Was your day nicer? Did your boss give you less of a hard time today? I wonder about. See, I don't get into people and things, I guess, as much as some. I've told you about this regarding, for example, when the Steelers won the Super Bowl in 2005 2005 season, the 2008 season. Fan of the team. It didn't really make that much of a difference in my personal life at the time. It was great. I enjoyed it. It was cool. But you still have to get up and go to work the next day. You just do. And I wonder about these people who get so into this stuff. So passionate. Putting Donald Trump signs in their yards and putting bumper stickers on their cars. You know my attitude. The way our government is supposed to be set up is politicians should be putting bumper stickers of their constituents' names on their cars, not the opposite. That's the way it's supposed to work. So it seems weird to me that your average person puts a politician's name on their car as a bumper sticker and ruin that bumper, and deface the car. That always seems weird to me. But all these people, they're going to get what they want. I hope they're happy about it. Did they get to work and high-five people, other pro-Trump people? Just wonder. This certainly, you know what this certainly feels like? It certainly feels a lot like when Barack Obama was going to get the nomination for the Democrats, didn't it? It certainly feels a lot like when Barack Obama won the election in 2008 and people thought they were going to be getting free cars and free health care and free houses and free this and free that. And they did get some free stuff. They got free phones. Wonder where all these people are now. I remember those videos from back then. It certainly feels like that. How soon before Donald Trump comes out and says, well, once I'm elected, the seas will recede, the water will clean itself up, the air will the smog will go away. How soon before Donald Trump says that? But he got to that 1237 number. I guess we're locked in now. I think, I'm going to say it again. I think this is going to be like the guy who marries the stripper. It's going to be so perfect. She's hot. She tells me she loves me. All this stuff. And then somewhere down the road, well, all those bad things start popping up again. She wants to start dancing on the pole again. Dancing, down the street. Lap dancing for other guys. They start calling her on her phone. She's telling you that those guys don't mean anything to her. Then suddenly money starts vanishing out of your wallet. And then you wake up one day and you think, oh my God, I married a stripper. But it seemed like so perfect at the time. And there wasn't anything that you as a guy, your friends were telling you, you aren't really going to marry a stripper, are you? Oh, she's a good girl. She's using that money. She's saving that money. She wants to go to law school. Oh, really? She doesn't even have a high school diploma, dude. How's she going to get into law school? Oh, she's going to get that too. Okay. Ignoring all of the signs. It's going to be like that. And those guys who, or you could say in this analogy, those guys who are those never stripper guys who knew what they wanted, knew they wanted a nice moral woman, and were willing to hold out for that, and they weren't willing to get married unless that came along, and weren't willing to go the stripper route, or the cougar route, or the sugar babe route that was going to give them all these things. They were willing to hold out for a good quality woman, and they're willing to stay single if they couldn't get that. Those are the men who usually end up benefiting the most. But those Trump people, they're trying to convince us that, well, you either marry the stripper or you marry the woman on welfare. You have to do either. Well, you don't have to do either. They're both horrible. They're both very, very poor choices. Just because one looks better than the other, and one has more money than the other, and one seems to have had more of a real job than the other, doesn't mean anything. But it seems like Republicans and conservatives want to marry the stripper. With the funky hair. Way it goes. Let's move on to something else. Disney versus the VA. See what's been going on here have you heard this story about how the guy who runs the VA tried to compare the VA to a waiting line at Disney? It's not about the wait time. He says even Disney has wait line times, but it's the care that you get. People are perfectly willing to wait in a line if you give them what they want when they get to the front of the line. Saying that the VA's long lines to get into it are no different than the ones at Disney. Well, if there are any military members who are going to the VA and have to wait an hour to get in to see a doctor, that would be good now. That would be a huge step in the right direction. Because I live in Tampa, less than an hour and a half from Disney World, and I have a annual pass as a Florida resident. You go there, and on the most popular attraction, what would that be? The Haunted Mansion. They have some new stuff over there that I haven't seen yet, but some of that new stuff, the Hollywood Hotel of Terror, whatever it's called, you have to wait an hour and a half. If military veterans only had to wait an hour and a half to get in to see their doctor and then get the care that they needed, the VA system would be the greatest medical system in the history of the world. But we're not talking about hours, are we? We're talking about days. We're talking about months. And dare I say it, when you go to Disney, it's not like you're standing in line and the reason you're there is because you're trying to save your life. And in fact, when you go to the VA, sometimes that is the case. But there have been many people who have been trying to, how would you put it, stab this VA dragon, this thing that has been created due to government bureaucracy. And this is what comes out of it. When you hear the leader of the VA, the supervisor, the guy responsible for it talking like that, this is what it looks like when a bureaucrat, a bureaucracy starts to feel the heat. They start to, and everybody wants to be a comedian, you notice that. It's no different than when Ben Carson would come up with these analogies when he was still running for president. And he's still around, by the way, working for Donald Trump in a much more limited capacity, I think, now. But he would come up with these weird analogies, prison sex, and comparing it to people who are gay and all that. And you could just tell Ben Carson really never had a real discussion with anybody about his political beliefs. Nobody. And same way with this VA supervisor. Either he just came up with that, in bed one night, Or he has a bunch of yes men and yes women around him. He says, well, how about if I go into this meeting, this committee meeting, and they're going to be grilling me, and I compare the VA, what we do here, to Disney. And everybody around him said, yeah, that sounds really good. Not one person in any of these departments of government who is a no man or a no woman. In fact, I'm sure that VA supervisor came up with that on his own. Hey, I'm going to say this, and they all said, that's the smartest thing I've ever heard. And not realizing how arrogant and condescending and just how wrong it is. Now, we know, VA, or Disney, in its defense, came out with a statement, because they heard about this. You know, they have people out there. They got ears on the ground. They came out and went through the process, and they said, we are constantly trying to make our user, our visitor, our guest experience better. And we take waiting in lines very seriously. And I can tell you they do. Doesn't always work out. Of course, they came up with the Fast Pass system years ago, and now they have an updated one that I'm going to guess works better, but I haven't been there when it's been really, really busy, so it's hard for me to say. But Disney is always working on ways to better their guest experience. And they have many people who are paid to do that. They just don't have people making the attractions better. They're looking at how people walk throughout the park and how they experience and what they touch and what they see. VA, it just opens the doors every day and says, we're just going to do the best we can do, and you're just going to have to be happy with that. And the truth is, if the VA was an amusement park, it would have been out of business decades ago. Disneyland, opened in the mid-60s? It'd be closed by now if it was run like the VA. It wouldn't have made it to 1970. Disney World opened in the early 70s. It wouldn't have made it to 1980 if it was run like the VA. The VA would be some amusement park that people talk about in past tense. Remember when we used to go to the VA amusement park back there in 1957? Whatever happened to that? Oh, that's right. It opened in 55 and then it closed in 59 because it couldn't make any money. And you had to get on a ride, you had to wait for days. You had to bring a tent when you went to that amusement park. You had to camp out overnight just to ride that roller coaster, and because the roller coaster was broken down all the time. That's what the VA is. Now, to add another layer to this, so on top of this, Bernie Sanders wants to get involved. And so what's he do? He sees, oh, hey, Disney is attacking some government department. How dare it? And so what's Bernie Sanders come out and say? Talks about how Disney is abusing its workers and underpays them and is doing this and doing that. And this should be a lesson to Disney, by the way. Not so much defending themselves against the VA and showing how they actually do care about their customers' experience better than the VA. But Disney has probably been one of the most high-profile companies in the United States that has tried to be friendly to the PC culture. Having Gay Pride Week or Gay Pride Day or Gay Pride Month. Maybe it's eventually Disney will just have a Gay Pride year. Gay Pride why stop there? Gay Pride Decade. No, wait a minute. Gay Pride Century. And the diversity and doing all these things that are so PC. But they have to learn that when they say one wrong thing about some government entity, they are still going to get attacked. If Disney thinks that they are going to escape the wrath of bureaucrats and socialists and people who love red tape because they're doing this thing for gay people and diversity and all this, they are wrong. And this is what we as conservatives have tried to tell them. We tried to warn them that doing this isn't going to make anybody happy. It's just going to force all this stuff more down their throat. And because the government doesn't care whether Disney makes money or not, just can't give in. But they did. But I want to continue to talk about this after the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
The voice of American conservatism. WRS Digital, Red State Talk Radio.
And we are back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I want to continue to talk a little bit about this VA, Disney, Bernie Sanders thing. I want to move on to the Bernie Sanders side of it. So he was criticizing Disney because it was criticizing the VA, which the VA was criticizing it right back. Going on and on about how Disney doesn't do this and Disney doesn't do that. And at redstate.com, I think it was, they had a write-up about what Disney employees get. And we know, it wasn't long ago that there were a lot of Disney engineers complaining about getting canned and how they were forced to teach their replacements who are working for less money, and that sucks. And that's not going to change under Donald Trump, by the way, or Hillary Clinton. But that's what companies do. Sucks. Misusing it. Misusing the H-1B visa program. And they should be held accountable for that. The problem is that here's Bernie Sanders criticizing Disney, and then at this rally and making fun of Disney, and all of the people there who support him are also making fun of Disney. Does Disney do this? Does Disney do that? No. And we know, socialists. And then the hatred of corporations all coming out in one speech that Bernie Sanders gives. Now, here's what I know, though. And this one makes so much about this and so much about everything else in American politics sick. People who do this stuff are sick. These regular people, I hope most of them have regular jobs, good jobs. I hope they have their families and everything else. You know that they have Disney DVDs in their home. You know that they've been to Disney World or Disneyland. You know that they've gone and seen Disney films, and you know what? Love them. But because some politician makes fun of Disney, and because suddenly these people have become part of, whether it's the Bernie Sanders cult or the Hillary Clinton cult or the Donald Trump cult or any other political cult out there, they feel obliged that they may have to make fun and criticize something that they love. That is what is so wicked about American politics today. That people so easily get roped into this stuff. And that's why I continue to say the problem with the United States is not so much the politicians, it's the people. These people aren't being forced to do this. They're not being forced to go to these rallies. There's no gun to their head saying that they have to go along with Bernie Sanders when he says all these crappy things about Disney, but they do it anyway. They'll stand there for an hour while he does that, and then you know what? Some father or mother, they'll go home, see their kids. Hey, kids, want to watch a Disney DVD? They say, yeah, okay, let's do it. Meanwhile, an hour ago, they were just saying how bad Disney is. It is sick. That you would make fun of a company that has given you and your family hours and hours and days of entertainment by choice. And you chose to buy their DVDs, go to their parks, and then you stand there because some politician makes fun of it that you feel you have to go along. That is sick. Anyway, somebody told me recently, I'm not going to reveal who it was, said, sometimes, you really sound angry sometimes on your show. And sometimes I am. I'm just motivated. In fact, I was talking to the woman who I do my other show with, my America's Missing podcast. It's becoming very popular very quickly. I'm not saying that I'm surprised. I'm just going to say I think she and I both underestimated the market. Underestimated the size of the market for a show like that, which is good. You should look for it, America's Missing Podcast. But I was talking to her about doing the show, and just going off a little tangent for a second, that sometimes you have to get into, sometimes when I do the show, I do feel a little bit like a different person than the person I am in real life. I've told you, I don't talk that much in real life. I really don't. I guess I save it all for this show and the other show now. But she's not used to doing this and doing public speaking, stuff like that. And we were having a conversation about that. And I think to this point, she's done very, very well. And I'm ecstatic for her, and I'm ecstatic for the show. You know, it's very nice. But I was telling her, from my experience, maybe some things, you know, you need to think about when you step in front of the microphone. So when I hear me going off on this tirade about people and politicians making fun of a company that I know that is not perfect, but on the other hand, I know has given years and decades and centuries of time and entertainment by choice to not just people in the United States, but around the world. And I know that people from around the world, if you know, it's their dream to come to Florida and go to Disney World. That, you know, for your average American, you can drive there in a day for, you know, if you're on the East Coast. It's no big deal. Some people go there once a year. For some families in the rest of the world, that is a lifetime achievement. And the reason they do it is because Disney, with its entertainment branches all over the world, with the movies going all over the world, its products all over the world, these people hold Disney in very high regard, and it's like a lifetime thing. Once they come here once, some of these families can't afford to fly to the United States and go there again. And here is some socialist kook politician making fun of it. So when I start thinking about that, I do get a little irked. And I do sound a little angry, and it does tick me off. Nothing you hear on this show is a show. It is genuine. I was listening to another podcast. It's a very, very popular conservative podcast. The show is not on Red State Talk Radio, but I'm not going to say the name of it. Go to Podomatic. All I'll say this is go to Podomatic and look for a very, very popular conservative show. It's way more popular than my show is on there. Let's just put it that way. If you want to see why, to me, conservatism hasn't been more successful, and I've given you all sorts of reasons about the last 8 months since Donald Trump got involved, really trying to dissect what's going on here. Truth is, I'm not so sure that a lot of conservatives want genuineness. When I look at this particular podcast, and I've listened to it, it is as fake can be. This person who hosts it uses more cliches in one episode of the show than I will use in a year. But people like it. Conservatives like it. Something I don't understand, and it makes me feel disconnected from what I think, who I think conservative people are. So you just get a little bit of a different show than, I guess, what it takes to be popular these days. And I'm not going to change. It's not worth it to me to change. I'm not going to change just to be popular. We've tried it that way. Those people have been popular. We're finding out how many fake people we've had amongst us over the years leading us. We're finding it out. Because of Donald Trump, and I'll give him credit for that, we're finding out who the fakers are. But the question really is the audience willing to admit that they've been fooled? And to this point, I guess not. Because all those same people are still going along with it. So I just do a different show. But you go to Podomatic.com, you look for the list of top conservative shows, and you listen to it. Hopefully you'll see what I mean. To me, show is unlistenable, but it's popular. If it's popular, then I understand why we as conservatives were losing to liberals so much. If we're just going to do in cliches and quotes from other people for entire shows like other people do, then we lose. If you're willing to change, I'm willing to have you as an audience. That's all I can tell you. Let's move on to something else. Gary Johnson, you know who he is? He is a guy who wants to run as the Libertarian candidate for president. He is also the former governor of New Mexico. And speaking of which, going off on a tangent, did you see that Donald Trump made fun of the governor of New Mexico while he was in New Mexico giving a speech, made fun of Susana Martinez? I sent that link of that story to this political friend of mine, this longtime friend of mine, and I said, you know what? If you're going to vote for him, I hope all these logical pretzels you're going to have to put yourself into over at least the next 4 years. In fact, you might want to start those yoga lessons right now, I told him. But getting back to Gary Johnson, he wants to run as a Libertarian candidate, and this is a story because of there's so many people who dislike Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump that the Libertarian Party is thinking, well, this might be our chance to introduce ourselves, raise a little bit more money than we usually do, get a few more votes than we usually do, try to put a good face on our party. Maybe somebody want to join, and on top of that, maybe some of those Libertarian people are laughing, saying, see, we told you so. We told you that it was wrong to go along with the Republicans and the Democrats all these years. We tried to warn you. I can hear them out there already. The problem is that Gary Johnson, in looking at his record, is not that libertarianish. There's a word. There's a word you're not going to hear on any other show today. Libertarian-ish. So libertarian with a hyphen, then I-S-H. As governor of New Mexico, the spending in that state went up even faster than the rate of spending at the federal government level. Now, granted, he balanced the budgets in New Mexico, but did it, and I'm not going to get into the particulars of that because I know you don't care. Let's just say that the books were balanced on paper only, not in reality. Now that's disgusting as it is, because this isn't exactly what you think of when you think of a libertarian candidate. Really, spending should actually be going the opposite direction. If you think you have a libertarian as your governor, then spending should be cut quite a bit. That's not what happened. In contrast, Scott Walker in Wisconsin, who nobody would ever confuse as being libertarian, has actually cut the state budget in that state. They are actually spending less money now than they were before he was governor. Real cuts, not a cut in the rate of growth, but actually in real dollars. Gary Johnson in New Mexico didn't do this. Now, I have nothing against Gary Johnson. As you know, I'm not going to vote Libertarian in this coming election. I'm not. I'm not a Libertarian. I'm a conservative. There's a difference, and enough difference that it makes a big deal to me. To some, not so much. That's where that saying conservatarian comes up. It's a combination of conservative and libertarian. Don't even know if I'm that. And maybe I do have some libertarian economic policies, but really, if what Gary Johnson did in New Mexico passes for libertarian economic policies and what he did as governor and how much was spent, then I guess maybe I don't believe in libertarian economic policies, if that's a representation of it. But here's the biggest deal about this that should bother everybody. Here's what I know. As much as libertarians have been making fun of Republicans and Democrats for all of these decades, mindlessly voting for the Republican and the Democrat, no matter who that candidate was, and we know that's gone on, and it's going to happen this year too, despite the candidates that both the Democrats and the Republicans have. I'm not going to do it. I'm not a member of the Republican Party anymore. I'm unaffiliated. And I feel good, just like James Brown. The libertarians are going to do the exact same thing. These people who for decades have tried to portray themselves as being pure as the driven snow, perfectly perfect. I'm not going to get fooled by those Republicans and Democrats. There's not a dime's worth of difference between them. These libertarians are going to go and vote for Gary Johnson, who spent more money than any governor in the history of New Mexico before him. And the rate of spending went up while he was governor. I know, hey, you got a legislature, what you going to do? I know. He doesn't want to talk about it too much, does he? Didn't step down when he saw that being the principled libertarian that he's supposed to be. And we know how principled libertarians are. You know how we know? Because they're never afraid to tell us. You would have thought that Gary Johnson, when this was happening, and he saw that the legislature wanted to make a budget that was bigger than last year, he would have said, I'm a libertarian. I can't have anything to do with this. This is wrong. I'm going to try to stop it. But it doesn't look like I'm going to be successful, so I can't do anything about this. I need to step down if I am truly faithful to my libertarian character and my libertarian values. Didn't do that. But libertarians are going to go vote for him anyway. Now, you know what that sounds a lot like? That sounds a lot like Republicans and Democrats to me. Now, will you libertarians just admit it? Just please admit something that I've known for like all time anyway, that you're really no different than the rest of us. At least the way I used to be until recently. Just admit it. It's okay. We know. You denying it only makes you look stupider. And I suppose there's a chance. I saw this name, and I haven't looked too much into him yet. This Austin Peterson guy. I saw an article that Eric Erickson wrote about how this Austin Peterson guy might be the libertarian candidate. I didn't have a chance to read it, unfortunately. I don't know if this guy's any different. I don't know if I start looking into his background. He'll have big deficits and big budgets as well. I don't know. But Gary Johnson is a guy who libertarians have held up as being a good guy who should be president for a while now, and it's just not the case. One more reason, like I said, that you never Trump people should not be fooled into voting for the libertarian candidate just because there's an L beside his name. Because he's really not. In fact, when you start looking at really, when you get down to it, and you start looking at the libertarian platform, and then you combine it with a libertarian who recited over increase in a state budget, really you're just talking about a Democrat. You're really just talking about a liberal who's pro-choice on one hand, big state budget on the other. That sounds like a liberal Democrat. That sounds like the governor of California, Jerry Brown. You should just stay away from it. As I've told you, this is maybe a reason I still continue to be against a third-party run is we need to bake in this a little bit. The United States needs to be put out in the sun, being that it's getting beautiful down here in Florida. It's going to be Memorial Day weekend. It's going to be July. The sand's going to be hot. The water's going to be the perfect temperature. We need to put the United States out in the sun for a little bit with no sunscreen. Maybe we need to get burned a little bit. First degree burn, second-degree burn, for us to really realize the mistakes that we've made. Instead of us conservatives hoping on a third-party run to try to save this country. And besides, yesterday or the day before, when it was mentioned that Mitt Romney should try a third-party run, I said, I'm just not going to go along with that. That's just idiotic to me. So there's Gary Johnson for you. Just wanted me to tell. There's a good article, I guess it was at National Review, talking about him. So you can take it for what it's worth. And so don't be fooled by the libertarian label. Just as you should not be fooled by the conservative label. Some politician labels himself conservative or anything else. You better dig a little bit deeper than that. Let's go on to something else. I'm getting through a few topics today, more than I usually do, trying to get some things off the table before tomorrow's show. Did you see this story from Bloomberg about the site Zero Hedge, which is one of the most popular financial sites? This should bother you, and it's really something that I've told you for a while, but it was really exposed very well in this story. Zero Hedge is, if you go to it, I went to it for a while, but I started saying, these guys are kooks. I'm not sure that these guys know anything. Now, they write under pseudonyms, all under the same name of Tyler Durden, which is the name of Brad Pitt's character in Fight Club. Well, one of the guys who is kind of like the underling has finally come forward to admit who he is, because it's been this big mystery as to who owns this site, who runs it, who writes for it. Well, now it's all come out. And here it was some lackey, and he was doing the work of these two rich guys. One lives in San Francisco that's involved in hedge funds, and another guy who's somewhere else who's a rich guy. Multi-millionaire, and I have nothing against people being multimillionaires, but if you read the site, and if you've been following the site, you will see that the site tries to portray itself as kind of an anti-establishment site for investors who really want to know the truth about what's going on in the United States economy. Meanwhile, the thing is run by a couple guys, if you want to use the establishment word, who couldn't be more establishment. And really what this underling has come forward to say is all of what's written on that site is crap. Now, see, this is something that I always wonder about, because I went to that site pretty regularly for a month just to see what it was like. And after a month, I decided this site is so full of it. You know, and I don't have an advanced financial degree. I'm not involved with Wall Street or anything, but I'm reading this stuff and I'm like, this stuff is crazy. So I start wondering, why is this site so popular? Are people really this stupid that they keep coming back to this site and actually believe what is written? I guess so. It does not, having been there, it does not surprise me then that the underling says, you know what, most of the articles, they're really not meant to be serious. We do this just because this is what people want to read. We don't necessarily believe it, but it's just a site that we know that it will draw people there. If we write this and we write that, doesn't matter if it's true. And this is the guy that has been managing the Zero Hedge site for a few years now. And the guys who started, these multi-millionaire guys, didn't want to worry about anything but worrying about getting eyeballs on it. Doesn't matter what the article was about. This is the problem. And where I'm going with this, unfortunately, I'm out of time, is most conservative sites have fallen into this same exact trap. Doesn't matter about the truth or facts. All it matters is whether people are clicking on it and we're getting eyeballs to the site. And that's something different, unfortunately. But I got to go. EdwardDentzel.com is where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can find them at Podomatic, Podbean, SoundCloud, and YouTube. EdwardDentzel.com/book. You can download for free the first chapter of my next novel called The Comebacks. Facebook, LinkedIn. Email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. Follow me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain. My other show, America's Missing Podcast, you can find it at iTunes. and Podomatic and YouTube. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.